Hi everyone, so we're back to the bookshelf tour, and I thought that I would do another, maybe this one and then the next one as well to keep us going. This shelf mainly is sort of mystery, crime, gothic, classics, and a few short stories at the end. Beginning of this shelf I have all of my Agatha Christie books. Mainly they are Poirot books. The only one that isn't is this Miss Marple, the first one in the series, The Murder at the Vicarage. I have the Agatha Christie books in various editions because I usually pick them up secondhand. This is The Mysterious Affair at Styles, the first Poirot book, and it's probably one of my least favorite, but I just wanted to own a copy of it. The Murder of the Orient Express is one of my favorites in terms of the ending of it. I think is one of the most sort of rewarding endings of any Poirot mystery. Dumb Witness, which is another one that I really like. So I've actually read more Poirot mysteries than I own. I just keep the ones that sort of stood out to me. This is the ABC Murders. This is one that sort of feels different to the usual Poirots in that it's much more epic and sort of large scale. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, and I love these what are they called? The Facsimile editions. I love the design of them, and they're just really well produced and nice quality paper and everything. And this one is also the Facsimile edition with Hercule Poirot's Christmas, and I really like this one as well. Then we have sort of modern or contemporary crime books that I've read a really long time ago. So this one is The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. Then we have Nosferatu by Joe Hill. This is another one that I really loved when I read it, and I've been meaning to read more Joe Hill since. Then we have a really fun, cozy crime. It is The Tale of Briarbank by Susan Wittig Albert. This is a series of books where Beatrix Potter is an amateur sleuth, and I mean the sort of the idea of that is fun. And also it's definitely cozy in the sense that it's not super high stakes. Then we have the only Gillian Flynn book that I've kept. So I've read all of her books that are published, I think. It's the only one that I really liked. And the short story as well, although I own that as an ebook. But yeah, so this I read when it was really popular, before the movie came out. I feel like I heard constantly people talking about this, but it was way before BookTube, so I haven't talked about it ever, I think, on video. And then this one I read actually fairly recently. It is The End of Mr. Y by Scarlett Thomas. This is Tigers in Red Weather by Liza Klausmann. This is sort of the family centered and with a mystery at the center of it as well. And those kind of things are definitely my thing, like a lot of intrigue and family dynamics and sort of strained relationships. I think that's kind of one of my sweet spots when it comes to literary fiction. And then this one I really, really want to reread. That is The Collector by John Fowles, about a man who collects butterflies and eventually also collects a girl. Andrea from Infinite Text did a wonderful video about the male character in this book. I will link that below. She talks about him and compares him with other sort of similarly obsessed male characters in literature that I found really interesting as a discussion. The next one is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I really love this one. I think I might like this slightly more than Rebecca, but I'm not sure if I would feel that way on a reread, but I definitely want to reread both this and Rebecca, and I love this cover as well. Then we have a Penguin English Library edition of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I love this book. It is probably one of my favorite classics, and is also one of the few ones that I've reread. Next is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. When I read this book, I hadn't heard about a lot of the discussion about the woman in the attic, especially, and I would be curious to read this with that sort of in my mind, in the back of my mind, and see how I read the book differently. I really love this one, and I think it is one of the most accessible classics. I also have this Penguin English Library edition as well, because I just found it in a secondhand shop and I love the style of them. So then let's just get these over with. So this is the, I think I might have even talked about this already, but it is Grotesque by Natso Kirina, and then these two are the Stig Larsson books. This is the first one. The Swedish title is so different from the English. So the English, I think, is The Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, but the Swedish one translates to Men Who Hate Women. And then the second book, I think, is the same title in English and Swedish, The Girl Who Played with Fire. So let's move those out. And also this vintage, I can't think of the word right now, but yeah, I just bought this because I thought it might be useful for when I'm reading my Disney art books, because they're huge and I can't have them in my lap very comfortably, so I thought the distance would be, it would be useful to have. So then we move on to my Shirley Jackson books, all in the Penguin Modern Classics line, although annoyingly, I have two books in the new version of the Penguin Modern Classics line with the turquoise. So we have The Haunting of Hill House, which I liked, but I think I might like more when I reread it. And then The Bird's Nest, definitely one that I really like. So it's in my, maybe my top three. We have my favorite, We Have Always Lived in the Castle. Who doesn't love this book? I have actually done a video review of this that will also be linked below. Then we have a Shirley Jackson that I don't recommend. So this is The Road Through the Wall. This is her debut novel, and I did not like this one. After having finished this one, I was so bummed out so that I didn't want to read her for a while. So it wasn't a good one. I eventually have to reread it, but not craving to do so. Then the next one we have is The Lottery and Other Stories. This is the first thing that I read by Shirley Jackson and that got me on to her fan club, I guess. And then lastly we have Hangs a Man. Again, this is one of my favorites. We move on to the end of this shelf, which is the, I guess, the different formats. So we have two Everyman pocket poem things. This one is The Great Cat, so it's all poems about cats. And then we also have The Four Seasons. I feel like I didn't like the editing of this one as much as I did of the cats or the selection. Then we have Macbeth. So this is a vintage edition that I picked up in a local thrift store, and it actually has, see if I can find an example, has tons of writing in it, and that was the main reason I decided to actually get this, because I love when I find vintage books. I think this one is from the 50s. I love that when I find vintage books that have annotations in them. Then we have Autobiography of Red by Carson. I'm not a big poetry reader, so I think that's one of the reasons I can't appreciate this one as much as maybe is possible, and also the fact that it's based on Greek mythology, and I think I probably missed a lot of the nuance or the details in it. Ariel by Sylvia Plath. I don't love all of her poetry, but there's definitely a few that just stands out. This is a full volume of all of Karin Boye's poetry. So she is a famous Swedish poet that is actually most well known for her poetry, although I prefer her novel Kallocain more than her poetry. And lastly on this shelf are my J.D. Salingers. So I've shown these several times. These are the beautiful, simple, one color and gold typing editions, the Penguin editions of J.D. Salinger's books that I absolutely love and that I want to eventually get for The Catcher as well. So we have Raise High the Roof Beams and Franny and Zooey for Esme with Love and Squalor, and also called 9 Stories, 2 editions of The Catcher in the Rye. I think I will eventually get a third. So this is the shelf in its entirety. Let's move on to the next shelf below it. First we have this box set of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings series, so we have The Hobbit as well in this. and then The Fellowship, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King, and they all have these simple editions. But what I love about these editions, so I was looking for a nice edition to be able to reread the books. What I loved about these is that they are super like flexible. The spine is super flexible, so even though they're small, they're quite handy, I think, as editions go, and they also look beautiful. So I just felt like these were one of my favorite editions that I could easily reread, because I also, as you can tell here, I also have the mass market paperback editions. I have all of them in the same edition. I don't love to read these because they're so tight in the spine and the paper quality and the text and everything. I feel like they are not the optimal reading of these books, so I wanted a set that I liked, and I think these will be perfect for that. So this shelf is basically children's books, fantasy, and magic things. So as I said, the Tolkien books, and then we have some children's books, The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and then Anne of Green Gables. I did enjoy this one, but I think I enjoy the adaptation of it more than the book. Then we have one of my absolute favorite middle grade books that I don't feel is as read and appreciated as it should be. So this is The Cavendish Home for Boys and Girls by Clara LeGrand. This is a super spooky, actually terrifying book. There's a boy who disappears from the city, and his friend tries to figure out what happened, has wonderful illustrations like this. I feel like it's sort of Coraline-esque, but better. Because personally I didn't like the Coraline book. I did enjoy the movie. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Love this. I mean, it is sweet, sugary sweet, but in a nice way. I feel like this is one that is just fun to return to, whereas Anne of Green Gables for me is on the brink of annoying. And then another middle grade book that I really like is Skullduggery Pleasant by Derek Landy. I really need to continue on with this series. This is a really fun one that I've especially heard Amanda from Amanda Center talk about, so I will link one of the videos where she talks about it a lot better than I can do here. Owl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. This is an example of a book that I've read after watching the movie. I love the Studio Ghibli version of it, so I wanted to read the book, and I actually ended up enjoying the book and the movie totally, but in completely different ways, because the movie and the book is quite different, both in the plot and the characterization. And the feel of them as well. Then we have a book that I also heard about through BookTube that is The Willful Eye, Tales from the Tower, Volume 1. So there's also a second volume to this. This is a collection of fairy tale retellings that I think is more YA than middle grade. But I absolutely loved these retellings, and I think there were a lot of really good ones here. I especially liked the Bluebeard one and the one about or the retelling of the Snow Queen. I would highly recommend this if you like fairy tale retellings. Then we have The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. The Invention of Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick. This is part graphic novel as like this, and part prose story. I think one of the things I really like about Brian Selznick in the way that he combines the methods of storytelling is that the graphic novel is actually telling the story. It's not just accompanying the story in the prose, it's very actively telling the story and in a completely different tone, which I love. So these are all of the Harry Potter books. So I've read all of them in the Swedish, and then I've reread the first 3 books or maybe the first 4 books, yeah, in the English through the audiobooks. So I don't own the English ones, and I'm not sure when or if I will eventually. Maybe. We'll see. This is the first one, so I'll just show you the covers. We have the Sorcerer's Stone, this Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, The Goblet of Fire, The Order of the Phoenix, one of my least favorite ones, The Half-Blood Prince, and The Deathly Hallows. So those are all of the books that I wanted to share with you in this part of my library tour. So in the next video, I'll get into those books and then eventually get to those books. Just a little bit of a spoiler and towards the next videos in the tour. So I hope you're doing well and look after yourselves, and I'll talk to you soon.